Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3 Iron and today we are talking about POE goals and reviewing the 2019 calendar year. Now, of course, those of you who are new to the channel, you might not have seen all of this. Those of you who are veterans, you may remember that back at the beginning of 2019, we actually talked about some different goals and some different ways to set goals for yourself. Of course, if you're new to the channel, you can go ahead and like, subscribe, and ding the bell to be notified about more videos just like this one. If at any point in time you'd like to jump ahead or revisit any of our topics that we talk about today, you can, of course, check out those timestamps that are placed above my slightly balding forehead. Now, of course, there's 6 types of goals that we identified, and I've got a couple of different videos that chat about this. So just to summarize each of these goals, there are challenge type goals. That's the first sort of goal, where essentially players want to acquire MTX, or they want to acquire certain levels on their totem poles to be able to display in their hideout. That's the challenge goal. That's the first goal type, as it were. The second goal type that players often set for themselves is a build goal. So maybe you've got a desire to play a certain type of character. Maybe you want to play a certain ascendancy. Maybe you want to play a certain archetype. Maybe you want to play a support character. Maybe you want to play a Wind Ripper Magic Find character. Maybe you want to play an arc character. Maybe you've never played a miner or a trapper. Maybe you've never farmed with a build in the Hall of Grandmasters, and so you want to craft a build that will do just that. That's the second type of goal. It is a build type of goal. The third type of goal is the currency goal. This is by far the most common goal that I've seen from comments here on the channel, here in the G3 community, about players who want to make certain amounts of exalts or mirrors, or just learn how to generate currency for themselves at a more regular and steady, consistent pace. The fourth sort of goal is the progress goal, which is often marked by killing various bosses or simply doing a particular task a certain number of times. I want to farm 100 of this particular map. I want to kill this boss 1,000 times, etc. A progress goal that you set for yourself. Sometimes a progress goal can even include leveling to level 100 or simply maybe making it to maps for the first time if you're a new player. Those are all progress types of goals. The fifth type of goal is an item goal, which is of course notorious for farming headhunters. If you've never played a headhunter or never owned one yourself, then most likely at some point throughout your Path of Exile playing days, you're going to want to farm up enough currency or farm up enough cards in order, or simply get lucky enough to have a headhunter drop for you. Maybe it's an Edziri's Reflection, maybe it's a particular Watcher's Eye, maybe it's a mirror tier item that you are looking for, or a particularly unique style of item. That is the item type goal that many players set for themselves. The sixth type of goal and final that I identified, because I simply couldn't put anything else into any other big sorts of jars of goals or other sorts of considerations or compilations of goals, was simply the miscellaneous pile of goals, other sorts of goals. So I want to do something that isn't covered in the first 5 goals. Well, for me personally, this video that we are referencing was shot back in January of 2019. I believe it was January 12th of 2019 when this particular video was set, and I set for myself this year 2 different particular goals that I was aiming for in 2019. The first was to have one character of each ascendancy at least level 80 in standard, and second was to have currency enough to earn or find myself a Mirror of Calandra in 2019. So I had two overall build or 2 overall goals, one of them being a build goal and one of them being a currency goal for the year 2019. And this is how we did. So overall, first off, I just have to start off with the shortcomings. I don't own a mirror personally myself. That being said, one of the things that I have loved over the last year has been running the Path of Exile Good Guy Gaming Guild Bank, which has been an absolute blast. The guild has grown over the last year all the way up from, we had something like 50 players, I think, during Betrayal that were on the guild rolls, and now we're at over 200 slots in the guild, which is really exciting to see a community of players who are all coming together with various and sundry, like a wide variety of experience in Path of Exile. We're not all veteran players, we're not all newbies, and so it's a nice mix. It means if new players come into the guild, they can get help from veterans. It means if veterans are returning to the game, maybe from a break of a league or two, or maybe an even even longer period of time, they can come back in and get caught up relatively quickly. So I have very much enjoyed running the guild bank for a couple of different leagues this particular year when I've been playing softcore, and we have acquired for ourselves as a guild several different mirrors that we have then flipped and made more currency and then given that currency back to the guild. So it's very, very fun. At one point during the Legion League, when we were running the Legion Guild Bank, I remember a couple of different guild officers when we were flipping mirrors pretty consistently in Legion as a guild. One of the guild officers just wanted to take a selfie with a mirror that we were holding, so they took it and they took a selfie. It was like a group selfie of people gathered together in a hideout, everybody holding the mirror together, which was incredibly nerdy looking back upon it, but also very, very cool, right? I mean, we're a bunch of nerds playing Path of Exile anyway, and studying economics and enjoying economics inside the virtual world that is Rayclass. So a very nerdy thing, but also a very, very cool thing to accomplish together as a guild. So while I personally don't hold myself with a mirror in Standard, I am very, very happy that as a guild we have accomplished lots and lots of goals. We've actually had several different guildies who have dropped mirrors or farmed mirrors for themselves using techniques that we've talked about right here on the channel. So as I look back at my POE goals of 2019, yeah, I didn't get that one. That one's not done yet, which means it will probably be on the list for 2020. Another goal that I had was, of course, a build-related goal. I wanted to have one character of each Ascendancy class at level 80 or above. That was my goal at the beginning of the year. And the reason why I wanted to do this was to set myself up for success playing around in Standard and testing out different builds and ideas and then presenting them either to you all as a community or simply testing themselves out for myself or answering questions for guildies and Patreon supporters. So that was what my goal was for my builds of 2019. And I have to say, this one isn't quite finished, but I'm actually very proud of myself with as far as I've gotten it. So in this particular image that you're staring at, you can see that I've got at least one character from each of the Ascendancies inside the game, including one Ascendant. I actually have two Ascendants in Standard. One of them's 85 and the other one's 90, so I guess I need to delete one to make room for more characters. But you can actually see here every single class except for the Saboteur, who is at level 73, that's Sabo Draconis, as well as the Templar Ascendancy for for the Hierophant, who was actually named Templar Draconis. My hardcore Hierophant Draconis actually was an Inquisitor. He was supposed to be a Hierophant, but I decided during, I believe that was during Synthesis League, to go Spark Inquisitor because there was some rework to the way how Consecrated Ground was working, and there was some reworks to the way how the Inquisitor was functioning, and so that was originally supposed to be my level 80 and above Hierophant, and it ended up being an Inquisitor. Playing an Inquisitor in hardcore was probably not a great decision. He died at level 84, I think, and then I played him up to 85 in Standard because I had fun with him. So other than that, other than those two Ascendancies, and both of them are at level 73, so at any point in time I can simply hop over to Standard League, and I assume at some point in 2020, as things die down, and maybe there's a week or two here or there where things die down where we're getting ready for a new league, that I'll hop over to Standard and finish those characters off. By finish, I simply mean bringing them up to 80, so that way I've got enough passive points to mess around with any kind of builds that might be interesting to me, that might be interesting to Patreon supporters, that might be interesting to guildies, that might be interesting to you all as a community, so that way I can test things out and really see what a build is all about before recommending it to you all. Those were my two goals for Path of Exile in 2019. It was to acquire a mirror, which I didn't do personally, and to get all of the characters up to level 80, all of the different Ascendancies. And again, I didn't do that. So I've got two goals that are mostly finished, mostly accomplished, but not really done. So that leaves me hungry for more in 2020. Now, some other things that could come up in looking back at 2019 is really just reviewing the various and sundry leagues that came out in 2019. A quick way to think about this is simply with thumbs up or thumbs down. So those of you that like to leave comments, I would love to hear down below your opinions and your thoughts on the leagues of 2019. I'd love to hear if you gave a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the very first league that we were all experienced and that we all got to play in 2019, which granted it got released at kind of an awkward time right at the end of 2018, but it was the Masters reworks with the Betrayal League, the introduction of the Syndicate, which I think was a great league. For me, it gets 2 thumbs up. On release, it was awful. On release, my league launch was terrible. For Betrayal League, I went with an Impale champion because I really wanted to try out an all-physical build, and I thought it would be great. I ended up swapping over. I don't feel so bad about swapping over because I'm fairly certain, if memory serves me right, that Mathel actually did the same thing, that he league started with an Impale character and ended up swapping over. So if Mathel had a hard time even league starting with Impale early on when it released, then I don't feel bad with my terrible gaming skills that I needed to roll with a new character and swap things over. Anyway, so Betrayal for me gets 2 thumbs up looking back, but certainly we can't miss out that for a league and a half, basically, for most of Betrayal, and then for many people even rolling on into Synthesis, Betrayal encounters were incredibly rippy for anybody that was interacting with them, whether they were softcore or hardcore players. Oftentimes they would cause crashes. Oftentimes players were complaining about inconsistency in frame rate because of the way how the Syndicate would interact with maps and with zones and how they would load in. A lot of players would simply freeze and lock up. A lot of players would come out of a massive frame rate drop and then all of a sudden see the death screen. So there was a lot going on with Betrayal, and I feel like GGG actually learned a lot from Betrayal about how to release content, how to polish content, because things have definitely improved since Betrayal's release in terms of the consistency of the number of players you can play. That doesn't mean that everything's perfect. It doesn't mean that every league launch is grand. It does mean, however, that there has been improvement, certainly improvement, since the Betrayal League of 2019. So Betrayal for me gets 2 thumbs up. How about from you? Synthesis League. This is probably the single most controversial league that has ever come out in Path of Exile. Like, the number of people who simply hate Synthesis or love Synthesis. Like, what I'm trying to say, I guess, with Synthesis is, if you were to sum up Synthesis in a single word describing how the PoE community reacted to Synthesis, I would use the word polarizing. That would be the one word that would sum up Synthesis. It would be polarizing, because no other league has come out and seen so many players simply love it or hate it. For myself, I was on the Love It campaign, but I was on the Love It campaign for the crafting side of things. I didn't necessarily like the entire new map system and the entire Synthesis minigame of placing pieces and moving pieces and traveling around to distant memories, and not necessarily the Cortex fight or the various other bosses that came along with it, or even the souped up zones that came along with it. For me, Synthesis was all about crafting, and for me it gets 2 thumbs up because we got a chance to create multiple +1 socketed gems, implicit bows, and I'm still proud of those things. Those are by far the thing that I'm most proud of ever crafting in Path of Exile, and that's due to the synthesizer and due to the incredible amount of access that Synthesis made for players who wanted to craft and who wanted to get into the various ins and outs and nitty-gritty of crafting. For me, up until Synthesis, I wasn't necessarily a big crafter. You wouldn't necessarily be able to look back on my playthroughs or even here on the channel of things that we discussed as being tips and tricks for crafting. And Synthesis really was a 180 for me, opening up or unlocking, as it were, this whole wonderful world of crafting that I had really only dipped my toes into, but Synthesis we went hard into, and that was an amazing experience that I enjoyed and thoroughly desire for that to come back. I love top-end crafting now, and that is mostly due to Synthesis. So for me, Synthesis gets 1 thumb up because I know that, at least for me, the crafting gets the thumb up, but the minigame side of things, the memory system, gets a thumbs down for me. A lot of people also had problems with Synthesis, again, with simply consistency and performance, again, continuing that theme from Betrayal, and so it didn't necessarily get off to a great start early on, and I think that definitely informed a lot of players' opinions early on with Synthesis. Well, after Synthesis came Legion League, and never has there been a faster 180 in the PoE community than bouncing between Synthesis to Legion League. Legion League, of course, brought us Legion encounters and brought us Legion splinters and brought us an expansion to the very map device that we are all very familiar with, that typically has 4 sockets inside the map device, and Legion added a 5th and introduced for us the 5-way timeless domain. Also accompanying that came a whole new set of unique jewels that could drop in Legion encounters, which have been massive upgrades and massive suppliers for many niche builds that are out there. A whole new way of viewing the passive tree in Path of Exile, which if you're a new player to Path of Exile, maybe you've seen those reaction videos of various players, various Twitch streamers, various personalities in gaming who open up Path of Exile's passive tree for the first time, and their minds just are blown, right? They're just blown away by the options that they have with the passive tree in Path of Exile. It's staggering, right? And the build options and the replayability of this game is just unparalleled in the market today. And so it's really, really exciting whenever there's something that adds another layer to that passive tree. And sure enough, Legion just did just that. Legion also brought with it a whole new way for players to farm currency, for players to get into the currency making market by interacting with glacial maps and then farming legions inside glacial maps. It was very, very interesting, and I think at least for me and from my perspective, from where I heard it for the first time, if you heard it somewhere else for the first time differently, feel free to drop me a comment down below. But for me, the first time I ever heard someone say farming glaciers per hour was Grimrow, and that was just, again, for me, it was a mind-blown moment to look back and to say, okay, this is no longer about chaos per hour, this is about encounters per hour. And it really opened up a new way of looking at interacting with League content and how quickly you can get through League content when League content is simply a money bag waiting to be broken open. And that's exactly what Legion was. Every single map that you could run, if you could pop open those Legion encounters and blow open an entire encounter, let's say using Essence Drain Contagion, which many of us did. Of course, we all enjoyed Legion League. Some players burned out on Legion League, and so, of course, for some players who played it too much early on, they may have felt like they burned out on it later on. But I feel like Legion League was a very solid, very consistently rated league, especially coming off of the heels of the various problems that many had in Betrayal performance-wise, and then mechanically and philosophically with Synthesis. So I feel like as a community, and for myself personally, Legion gets 2 thumbs up. So leave me a comment down below and let me know, again, what you thought about Legion League. I had a blast during Legion League. I was running the guild bank in softcore, as well as, of course, playing an Essence Drain character, and then later on got a farmed a headhunter for myself, and then was, of course, playing a Cyclone build during that Legion League on Scion, I believe, was that Cyclone build, which that's the only time I had played Cyclone, actually, up until that point. So it was a good and interesting new experience for me, but for me, Legion gets 2 thumbs up. Moving on from Legion League, Legion, I played softcore, and then I bounced every other league between softcore and hardcore. So after Legion League, it was a hardcore league cycle for me getting into Blight League. Now, Blight League was, let's just say, lackluster in comparison with Legion League. A lot of players were very used to these new loot explosions that would pop out all over the place with Legion League. And Blight League came at us as a tower defense brought into the action RPG world of Rayclast. Some players were instantly turned off by that, no matter what anybody was shown during hype cycles. Certain players and certain portions of the community simply saw tower defense in Rayclast and thought, nope, that's not for me. Also during Blight League, and many of you out there I'm sure were included in this, there were just a whole bunch of other games that were released overlapping with Blight League, not to mention WoW Classic, along with some other very popular games including Borderlands 3. When you have this perfect storm of, that league mechanic looks kind of meh, a lot of people really enjoyed Legion League, and you've got a whole bunch of other games to distract people, then you've kind of got this perfect recipe for players in Path of Exile to walk away and get distracted for a league, and I think that's what a lot of players did during Blight League. I personally enjoyed playing hardcore in Blight. It was incredibly rippy and incredibly scary. I lost a whole bunch of characters during Blight League, and I had a great time with it. I had an absolute blast. I played a Juggernaut summoner for the vast majority of Blight League because I just didn't want to die, and I got that guy all the way up to level 93. He's actually featured here on our display. Almost Dead Draconis made it up to level 93 in hardcore before ripping to a tier 15 core boss. It was the Malachi Slam that got me. And I should have realized, looking back on that death, I really should have realized that that death was coming. I wasn't paying attention, and I'm pretty sure all of my zombies were dead. I'm not sure what they died to, but they were level 21, and I'm not sure exactly, again, what killed them in that zone. Maybe they were standing in the lava, as it were. But they all died, right? They all died. And at that point, as a summoner, when your minions that have got way more HP than you do die, you need to go, oh, it's time for me to leave this map. I need to get out of here. And I just didn't. And I saw his slam coming, and I thought in my head, oh, he's going to slam me. And then I saw Resurrect in town. So that was the end of Almost Dead Draconis. Anyway, I had a great time during Blight League. I didn't farm that many Blight maps. Blight maps and oils were by far the coolest parts of Blight League. They were the main mechanics that were added in for us as players to interact with. I thought it was amazing as a concept to add oils, which could, of course, add anointments, which were passive points that are now from the tree allocated to your jewelry, to your amulet. I thought this was a brilliant idea because it was one of the first times, other than jewels themselves, other than passive tree socketable jewels, other than that, it was one of the first times that we as a community and as a player base could evaluate passives on the passive tree with a currency amount, right? To actually say, how much will it cost me, not just passive point wise, to get this particular part of the tree unlocked, but how much currency will it cost? And because oils were tradable and upgradable and exchangeable, then that meant there was this whole new aspect to playing Path of Exile during Blight League, where you were essentially trading for passives on the tree. And it was very intriguing. It was very interesting from a design perspective, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I am definitely enjoying Blight now during Metamorph, actually even more so than I ever did in Blight. And so because of that, because of the inconsistency for drop rates of Blight maps, which simply were almost non-existent for the first couple of weeks of Blight, they fixed it later on in the league, but by that time people again had already made up their minds about whether or not Blight League was a good league or not. And frankly, for me, I had already ripped a couple of characters by that point, and so I only was dabbling by the second half of Blight League because it simply lost my attention. There weren't enough Blight maps to go around, although the oils really did keep my attention for most of the league as I was interacting and trading in Hardcore League, that league. So for me, Blight is going to get one thumbs up for ambition and for the concepts that they tried to implement and the way how it's gone core, but it'll get a one thumbs down for its implementation on release. And then, of course, there simply just didn't feel like there was enough to grind for end game wise. I think at that point, during Blight League, a lot of the POE community that was still playing Blight felt like they needed a new Atlas to interact with. Which, of course, brings us to where we're at right now, which is Metamorph League at the end of 2019. And I think I've got to say, Metamorph League has been a smash hit. If you want to kill bosses, you can go do that. If you want to farm currency, you can go do that. If you wanted an update on the Atlas because of the Atlas of Conquerors expansion, you can go do that. I think GGG has hit on so many things that were needed at just the right time. I think it's brilliant the way how they redid the Masters during Betrayal League, looking back at the beginning of 2019. It was much needed. A whole segment of the community, a loud minority, I think it was probably even a representative majority of the community, was sick of doing Master missions the way that they were presented in POE prior to the 3.5 Betrayal patch. And I think that was just brilliant the way how they implemented it. Granted, there were lots of problems on the implementation, but I think it's brilliant the way how it is now. I think the same can be said for the Atlas. I think over the last year, a lot of players have started to get sick with the Atlas and get sick with the various strategies that were involved in pushing the Atlas, whether that's the race meta or whether that's simply the casual guy who plays every once in a while on the weekends for a few hours. I think as a community, we all were getting ready for something new with the endgame and something new with the Atlas. And Metamorph and Conquerors of the Atlas provide both of these things. They provide kind of this loot pinata league, almost similar to Legion with the amount of currency that Metamorph spit out, but then also this whole brand new way to progress the Atlas that on a daily basis, you can check Twitch, you can check YouTube, you can check Twitter, you can check Reddit, you can check the official forums. On a daily basis, players are discovering new tips and tricks and ways to farm and ways to strategize and approach their goals for this new Atlas that we've got and for farming Metamorphs. So I think this is absolutely great. Overall, I would give 2019 2 thumbs up. I've had a blast playing Path of Exile in 2019. this is simply my game now. Like, this is my go-to game. When I'm excited and I've got time and Mrs. Draconis has said, hey, Iron, go play a game. You've got a couple hours. I'll watch the kids. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go play Path of Exile. I don't have to scratch my head and wonder, what is it that I should play today? Or, oh, man, I really wish a new game would come out. Like, for me, it's Path of Exile. That's what I'm going to be playing. That's what I think of Path of Exile in 2019, and that's most likely what I'm hoping for with PoE 2 in the future and with PoE in 2020. But of course, that's just my thoughts. I would love to engage with and hear your thoughts down below in the comments. So you can drop me a comment. Let me know what you thought of Betrayal, of Synthesis, of Legion, of Blight, and of course of Metamorph League, whether you're given 2 thumbs up, 2 thumbs down, 1 thumb up, 1 thumb down. Let me know down in the comments. And as always, I hope the year 2020 is the year when a Mirror of Calandra will drop for you. Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.